My Playful Wife, Episode 8, What a Man Learns, written by Mia. I started going to the gym in January. The connection between that choice and everything else was not something I understood at the time. I simply woke one morning, early before Saloni, before the city had fully committed to the day, and found myself standing in the gym 3 minutes from my office at 6 a.m. with a membership card and no specific plan beyond the need to do something with my body. The trainer's name was Samir. He was 26 and built in the way of someone who had decided, at some point, to make the body into a project and had been working on it seriously ever since. He looked at me with the eyes of a professional assessor. "Goals," he said. "I don't know yet," I said. He wrote something in his notebook with the neutral expression of someone who has heard this before and knows what it usually means. I found out what it usually meant. A man who has had something happen. A man who, in the absence of a clear target, needs the discipline of an external structure. A man who is too much in his head and needs somewhere to put the energy that thinking generates. The gym became a habit. For mornings a week. Early enough that it was finished before the day properly started, before the flat was awake, before Saloni's alarm went off in the other room. I had those hours to myself, just the body, just the work of it, just Samir's efficient instructions and the particular satisfaction of effort. Something changed. Not overnight, not in any way I could point to directly, but over the weeks, the body I had been carrying without much attention became something I was in dialogue with. Something that responded. Something that had more to it than I'd understood. Saloni noticed. She didn't say anything for 2 weeks, and then one morning she said, "You look different." "Good different," I said. She looked at me with the expression she used when the answer was obvious, and she had decided to let the obviousness do the work. She went back to her chai. I went to the gym the next morning with something extra in it. What a man learns when he starts paying real attention is that the person he married is a continent he has been treating as a postcard. 3 years. I had been married to Saloni for 3 years, and I was discovering, in the months after October, that I had been skimming the surface of her the entire time. Not from malice or in curiosity, from the comfortable habit of thinking I already knew, the trap of the familiar, the way long acquaintance produces the illusion of full knowledge. I was learning her properly now. The way she read, fast and complete, 1 book per sitting, the way some people eat, as though the experience requires total commitment and divided attention is an insult to the thing. She would pick up a book at 9 and set it down, finished at midnight, and her face in the interval would be the face of someone who has been somewhere. The way she called her sister every Friday, always between 7 and 8, always conducted in the register of 2 people who have shared something large and are maintaining the connection through the ritual of weekly contact. The sister lived in Pune. I had met her 3 times. I understood, listening to the Friday calls from the kitchen, that there was a version of Saloni that existed in that relationship that I had not met. The notebook. She kept a small notebook in her bag, not her sketchbook, which was larger and lived in the workroom, but a different one, personal. She wrote in it in the odd pockets of time, waiting for food in restaurants, on the sofa after dinner, occasionally in the morning before she'd fully woken up, the pen moving before the mind was fully operational. I had seen it. I had never read it. I had held back from reading it with the specific self-discipline of a person who has decided that some privacies are not his to breach, no matter what permissions the broader situation might seem to grant. One evening I said, "What are you writing in it?" "The small notebook." She looked up from where she was sitting, cross-legged on the bed, the workroom's materials spread around her. She looked at me with the measuring look she used when she was deciding how much to give. "Ideas," she said. "Sometimes just things." "Things like what?" She looked at the notebook for a moment. Then she held it out. I took it. I sat with it in my hands for a moment, feeling the weight of it, before I opened it. The page I turned to had a color swatch taped to it, a dusty terracotta, a burnt orange that leaned toward earth, with notes beside it about weight and drape and whether the collar should close or open. And below the fabric notes, in smaller writing, something that was not about cloth. "He is learning to see. I can feel it. I don't know yet if I'm glad." I sat with those words. The notebook in my hands, the person across the room, watching me read it, watching my face for what I would do with what I found. "He is learning to see. I can feel it. I don't know yet if I'm glad." I thought about what it meant for her to not know yet, about the specific uncertainty of that, not indifference, not fear, but genuine unknowing. She had been managing a situation, managing me and Piyush and the arrangement, with a competence and confidence that she brought to everything, and underneath that confidence was a question she hadn't yet answered. Is this okay? Am I okay? Is this man who is learning to see going to see something that will unmake what we are? I closed the notebook. I gave it back. "The terracotta one," I said. "Will it be next?" She took the notebook with a composure that was slightly more careful than usual, the composure of someone who has gambled and is waiting to see how the cards fell. "Maybe," she said. "Why?" "I want to see it when it's done," I said. She looked at me. Something moved through her expression, relief, I thought, and something else, the beginning of an emotion that hadn't fully arrived yet. "Okay," she said. There was a night in February when something shifted. Before I tell you about that night, I want to tell you about the mornings. The gym mornings had a quality I hadn't expected. Not just the physical part, the weights, the sweat, the particular satisfaction of Samir's clipped approval when I managed something I hadn't managed the week before. But the mornings themselves, the pre-dawn dark, the walk from the flat to the gym, the city not yet operational. I had never had those hours before. They had always belonged to sleep, to the compressed unconsciousness of someone who didn't think he needed the time. I needed the time. In those hours, I thought about the year. Not obsessively, not with the grinding quality of middle-of-the-night thinking, but with the particular clarity that physical effort produces, the brain freed from performance, just processing. I thought about what I was becoming and what I was losing, and whether losing some things was the price of becoming better ones. I arrived at this. I was losing the comfortable version of the marriage, the one that didn't require anything from me except presence and basic decency. I was gaining something I didn't have a name for yet, a marriage that required everything from me, that would keep requiring it, that was built on the assumption that I was capable of more than comfort. I was capable of more than comfort. This was what the mornings taught me, not through thinking, but through the body, the repeated demonstration every day that I was stronger than I had been, that capacity could be built through sustained effort, that the thing you thought was your limit was usually not the actual limit. Piyush had been in Bengaluru for a month. The visits had stopped. The weekly calls had continued, the rhythm of them changing slightly now that there was distance in the relationship rather than proximity. Something settling, adjusting. I thought of it sometimes as tidal, the movement between states, the ongoing adjustment to what was real. That night, Saloni came home from a meeting with the boutique owner, Kaveri, the first real meeting, the one where the collection had been discussed properly for the first time. She came in carrying the large portfolio she used for client work, and she set it down carefully, the careful way you set down something you're not ready to open yet, and she stood in the hallway for a moment. I was on the couch with a book. I looked up. She looked at me. "It went well," I said. "She wants all 12 pieces," Saloni said. "By when?" "May." I thought about May. About 4 months of the kind of work I had watched her do, the total absorption, the 10 p.m. evenings in the workroom, the hands that were always slightly roughened from handling fabric. "That's doable," I said. "Probably not," she said. "I'll do it anyway." She came to the couch. She sat beside me, properly beside me, not at the other end, but close. She leaned back. She closed her eyes. I put down my book. This was the thing I had been learning, when to speak and when to simply be. There were moments when what was needed was not words, but presence, the specific comfort of another person occupying the same space, being real in it, being available without demand. I stayed. After a while, she opened her eyes and looked at the ceiling. She called a distance, she said, the collection. She named it in the room. Kaveri? Yes. A pause. She held up the rose silk piece and said, "This is distance. Something that looks like it's closing and is actually opening." The room was very quiet. "She's right," I said. Saloni turned and looked at me, at my face, at whatever was there. "That's what this year has been," I said. "Something that looked like it was closing." She held my gaze. "And is actually opening," she said. "Yes," I said. She looked at me for a long moment in the February evening light, the kind of looking that is also listening, that is receiving something through the eyes that takes a moment to process. Then she reached over and took my hand off my knee and held it. Her hand was warm. She held mine the way she held fabric she was assessing, with complete attention, feeling for what was there. I held it back. A week later, I came home to find her on the phone in the bedroom, door not fully closed, the warm voice. I had learned, by now, not to leave the room, not to perform absence as a kind of statement. I went to the kitchen and made tea, and was simply in the flat, occupying my own life, while she occupied hers. She came out when the call was done with the expression of someone who has been somewhere good. "Bengaluru," I said. "Yes," she said. "He's okay." "He's good," she said. She poured herself tea. She looked at me across the kitchen. "He asked about you." "What did you tell him?" "That you're different," she said. "That you've changed since the gym." I looked at my tea. "And he said," I said. She smiled, the small, private one, the one she kept for things that were specifically hers. "He said that was good," she said. That it was right. I thought about Piyush in Bengaluru, building his life. I thought about what it meant to be asked about by someone who knew you in a particular and complicated way, not as a performance of care, but as genuine inquiry. He was asking because he wanted to know, because what happened to me mattered to him, because the three of us were connected in a way that the geography of cities could not entirely sever. "Tell him I said hello," I said. She looked at me. something in her face very still. "Tell him yourself," she said, and held out her phone. I took it. I looked at the screen, the open chat, the small photo of him in the corner, the most recent message visible. I thought about the lift, the corridor, the handshake. It's fine, isn't it? Between us. I called him. He picked up on the second ring.
"Yeah," he said.
Surprised, genuinely, but the surprise warm. "Just calling to say hello?" I said. "Don't make it a thing." He laughed. We talked for 20 minutes about Bengaluru, about a restaurant he'd found, about the kind of nothing that brothers talk about when they have decided to continue being brothers. When I hung up, Saloni was looking at me from across the kitchen with an expression I had never seen on her face before. Something entirely unguarded. Something that had always been there, but had not had the conditions to surface until now. "What?" I said. "Nothing," she said. Her voice was slightly uneven. "Nothing. I just..."
She stopped.
She crossed the kitchen. She put her arms around me, properly, fully, the kind of embrace that isn't comfort or desire specifically but contains both and more, the embrace of a woman who has been carrying something and has just felt a part of it lift. I held her back. Outside, February. Inside, the two of us in our kitchen, in the ongoing work of being who we were to each other. The distance closing and opening. Both simultaneously, both true. That night was different. I don't mean the night after Piyush called about Bengaluru, not immediately. I mean a few days later, in the middle of an ordinary week, when nothing particular had happened and there was no occasion for anything, and Saloni came to find me where I was sitting with the fourth notebook, and she stood in the doorway of the living room and looked at me. Just looked. I looked back. She crossed the room and sat beside me, and she reached over and took the notebook from my hands, gently, just taking it, setting it on the table, and she turned toward me with an expression that had no management in it at all. "You've been different," she said. "Since the gym. Since all of it." "Yes," I said. "I notice it at night," she said. "You're more," she searched for it, "present. Your whole body is more present." I thought about Samir, about the early mornings, about what happens when you ask a body to do hard things over months, not just the physical change, but the other change, the proprioception of it, the increased awareness of where you are in space. "I feel more like I'm actually here," I said, "in my own body, rather than managing from slightly above it." She looked at me, processing. "I want that," she said, "from you, the actually here version." "I know," I said. "I'm trying to give it." She studied my face in the way she studied fabric, feeling for the weight of it, the fall, whether it would do what it was supposed to do. Then she put her hand against my face, palm against jaw, thumb near my eye, the hold of someone who is deciding something. "I know things have been complicated," she said, "that I've made them complicated." "We've made them," I said. "I've made them more," she said. "And she stopped, started again. "You've been so careful with everything. With me, with Piyush, with what you feel. I know what it costs." "It's worth it," I said. "Is it?" "Yes," I said. "Every day it's worth it." She looked at me for a long moment, her hand still on my face. "I'm going to try to deserve that," she said. You don't have to try, I said. You already do. She shook her head. Don't let me off easy, she said. I want to earn it. I thought about what it meant. A woman who could have coasted on being loved, who instead wanted to do the work of being worth it. The specific integrity of that. Okay, I said. Then earn it. She almost smiled. Her hand dropped from my face and found mine. We sat like that in the living room in the lamplight in the ongoing life of our marriage. Present, both of us. Samir pulled me aside at the end of the session on a Friday in March. What changed? He said. What do you mean? He made a gesture, up, down, meaning me, my body, the change in it. 3 months ago you couldn't do that, he said. Now you do it like it's nothing. What changed?
I thought about this.
I started paying attention, I said, to things I wasn't paying attention to before. He looked at me for a moment with the eyes of someone who has seen many men in various states of falling apart and putting themselves back together. Same thing, he said. Body, life. Same thing. I walked home from the gym that morning instead of taking the auto, the longer route, 20 minutes, the city going about its morning around me. I thought about what Samir had said. Same thing. When I got back, Saloni was making breakfast. She had her back to me and she was humming the same song she hummed when she was absorbed, not really aware of herself, just making the sound the way a body makes warmth. I stood in the doorway. He is learning to see. What she had written in her notebook. I don't know if I'm glad. She knew now. Sit, she said, without turning. 2 minutes.
He said.
I paid attention. To be continued in episode 9, Closer.
Simbolo di copyright mia.
All rights reserved. That was episode 8 of My Playful Wife. If this story is staying with you, the next episode is already waiting. Subscribe so you don't miss it. The complete book is on Amazon, and early episodes plus bonus chapters are on my Patreon. Links are in the description.
Mia.
Thank you for listening.